So this is the Red Sea. We're on the Saudi Arabian side. You can see the Egyptian mountains across there. Across there would be Nuweiba Beach. Now the reason we're so far back is because we found the location where the marker was.
Hold on, wait.
This is where they started selling seashells down by the
That's where
Yeah, this is where the whole
that's where they believe they found Solomon's monument way back when.
We just have a few minutes. Okay, so the story is, now as you look across, you really can't see it because of the distance, but across the Red Sea is Nuweiba. Wadi Watir. Well, you haven't seen you have this massive gorge that comes through the mountains. Now, for what it's worth, when you read the account of Josephus in the 1st century, he describes where the crossing was. He's very specific about it. He says the Israelites were hemmed in by very tall, steep mountains. He says the Egyptians actually got up on the mountains and had them pinned on the beach. Now again, try not to think of it in terms of just a biblical story. You've got your family, elderly, the children, and it actually says that it was Pharaoh's, I forget how it says it, most elite forces, okay? So you're being chased by the Navy SEALs of the day, like the most elite military units, Pharaoh and his chariots, and you've just worked your way out through this gorge, you're pinned against the sea, and they've got you pinned down, and they start complaining like, why'd you lead us out of Egypt, Moses? Thanks a lot. And then comes the whole event. He strikes the sea, and it splits. Now, whether or not it was actually here, whether Josephus had it right or not, this is clearly what he described. Now, the traditional site is on the other side of the Suez, the marshes and the swamps, etc., right? It's shallow water. When you read the biblical account, it's not just like a shallow marsh. It describes it as the Yam Suf, the sea, the depths of the sea, etc. Like the biblical language is something profound and dramatic. There's nothing in the Bible that even begins to come close to ripping the ocean in half. And again, the entire purpose of this, the whole story of God bringing Israel out of Egypt, it really is framed as a romance. God is courting his people, trying to convince them that he is superior to all of the gods. So they've been in Egypt. I kind of tell it like this. God's kind of like, they're in love with the Egyptian gods. They're still enamored by all of these Egyptian gods, and Pharaoh in many ways is considered to be the greatest god of the time. And just think of the impressiveness of Karnak Temple and pyramids and all of these things. And God basically gets them to the ocean, and he says, can your old boyfriend do this? You know, he's trying to convince them that he alone is God. He's the only God that's worthy of being worshipped. He's not a false God. He's not an idol. What an incredible moment as the sun just dips down behind the mountains. And so think about it, you know, you're pinned against, your back is literally, I mean, between a rock and the ocean. Moses strikes the water, and just how surreal it would be the next morning. They look around and they're like, are you kidding me? Did that just happen? The ocean rips in half. And whether it's, you know, it uses the language of like the depths of the sea congealed. So a lot of people are like, this is way too deep. Look, I was not there. I don't know what happened, but that's what the Bible describes. He led them through the depths of the sea. Whether they walked, in some places they walked on dry land, other places it actually says the depths congealed. So the story is, Ron Wyatt comes here, and there was some type of a column on this side. On the Nuweiba side, there's still a column. The theory is, and of course we don't know, that Solomon, right, a few hundred years after the Exodus, marked the spot. That's the theory. It's still over there. There's no carvings. Ron Wyatt says that this particular column it was not exactly right here, but it's like right in this area. They marked it. He says that it had ancient, we'll call it Paleo-Hebrew or primitive Hebrew sort of markings on it. Again, that's just based on his word. We don't know. But then he said they removed it and put it, somewhere. If that's the case, then it would be wonderful if they're building a museum in Tabuk and, all of this. Eventually, some of these things were brought back, but they did mark the spot. So with that said, they get to the other side and they just go, are you kidding me? Did that actually just happen? Like, again, if this happened, humans are going, did I just walk through the middle and then they're looking back and Pharaoh and his armies are dead. And the Lord's like, oh, by the way, I killed your old boyfriend. And so, it starts out with him flexing, like to use the language of courting. And then he gets over here and he moves into the process of showing his provider side, his tender side. He's providing quail and manna, water from the rock, and this type of thing. So he's demonstrating the fact that he is worthy of worship. But they get to this side. They can't believe what just happened, and they start singing what's called, the Bible often calls it the Song of Moses. I call it the battle hymn of Moses, because it really is a battle hymn. And so Moses and Miriam, and they just start singing this celebration worship song, and it's antiphonal, which means Moses and Miriam would say a line, and then the people would respond, and it goes back and forth, and they're just celebrating. Now, who's to know, how exactly this was recorded, and if it's, sort of, if they edit it later and so forth. But as it comes to us in Exodus 15, we have the Song of Moses, and I just love it. Then, here they are. Moses and the Israelites sang this song to the Lord, so it really is a worship song. I will sing to the Lord, for he is highly exalted. Both the horse and the driver he has hurled into the sea. The Lord is my strength and my defense. He has become my salvation. He is my God, and I will praise him. My Father's God, and I will exalt him. Here it is. I love this verse. The Lord is a warrior. The Lord is his name. Pharaoh's chariots and his army he has hurled into the sea. The best of Pharaoh's officers are drowned in the Red Sea. The deep waters have covered them. They sank to the depths like a stone. Your right hand, O Lord, was majestic in power. So whenever the Lord, he uses the language as if he is exalted in heaven, but it's like he reaches down and manifests and displays his power. It uses the language of your right hand or your strong arm. It uses anthropomorphic language, right? But it's very poetic. Your right hand, O Lord, was majestic in power. Your right hand, Lord, shattered the enemy. In the greatness of your majesty, you threw them down, those who opposed you. You unleashed your burning anger and consumed them like stubble. So here's the language. By the blast of your nostrils, the waters piled up. The surging waters stood up like a wall. And it uses the language of a very high wall. The deep waters congealed in the heart of the sea. Scientifically, I don't know what we're talking about here, but the enemy boasted, I will pursue, I will overtake them. I will divide the spoils, I will gorge myself on them. I will draw my sword, and my hand will destroy them. But you blew with your breath, and the sea covered them. They sank like lead in the mighty waters. And this is it. Who among the gods is like you, O Lord? Who is like you, majestic in holiness, awesome in glory, working wonders? You stretch out your hand, and the earth swallows your enemies. In your unfailing love, you will lead your people that you have redeemed. In your strength, you will guide them to your holy dwelling. The nations, the Gentiles, will hear about this and tremble. Anguish will grip Philistia. The chiefs of Edom will be terrified. The leaders of Moab will be seized with trembling. The people of Canaan will melt away. Terror and dread will fall on them. But the power of your arm will be as still as a stone. Until your people pass by, O Lord, until the people you brought out pass by, you will bring them in and plant them on the mountain of your inheritance. ultimately pointing, returning back to Zion. The place, Lord, that you have made your dwelling, the sanctuary, Lord, that your hands have established. The Lord reigns forever and ever. It goes on. I'm going to end right there. But again, whether or not this is the location or not, we don't know. There's another theory that it was down by the Straits of Tehran, and people will look at the geology under the water and do measurements and all this. I don't have any strong opinion other than to record what history records. This is clearly where Josephus, in the 1st century, this is where the Jews in the 1st century during the time of Jesus believed it was. And again, that's 1,200 years or so after the fact, but nevertheless, we assume there was some type of oral tradition that preserved the location. But it's just nice, I mean, the whole story, to actually come to see it and just to kind of ponder the message that he was communicating then. It's really no different than what he wants us to understand now. All of these other gods, and when I say gods, it can be anything, right? All of the things that people dedicate themselves to, God goes, I'm the only one that's worthy of worship. You know, I think back to Deuteronomy 32 in the Song of Moses. When all is said and done, he talks about breaking his people Israel. You know, he says, when they come to the end of their strength, because he's talking about the golden calf incident. He goes, because you've provoked me to anger with your idols, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to provoke you to anger. And he says, and when they've come to the end of their strength, I'll say, where are your gods now? Where are all these gods that you offered this and that to? And he goes, behold, I am he. This is the one thing that he just wants. He goes, stop worshiping all of these worthless things and recognize I'm your creator. I alone am worthy of worship. And so, again, the story begins with a profound display of power. So it's good to start here before, because really we kind of did it in reverse with some of the other tours. It's good just to start here to remember this is where it all started, and then we'll kind of move on, because from here they proceed and eventually make it to the mountain. So, amen.
Amen.